You just have to look out in my gravel garden at this time of the year to see the fantastic shapes and the beautiful spring green of the euphorbias. Such a brilliant family. I'm Rosie Hardy, this is Rosie Hardy Gardening. Euphorbia is a huge plant family. I am going to talk about 7 different euphorbias here. That is a minute amount considering how many are garden worthy, but then if you are a houseplant expert, you will know there are masses of euphorbias that are used there. If you love your cacti, you will know euphorbia is a big plant family there. Trees, there are euphorbia trees. One of the most well-known euphorbia in the UK is at Christmas, the poinsettia. So they are such varied, wonderful plants, have been able to colonize nearly all of the world's continents. But there is one continent that they do not grow on, and that is Antarctica. Everywhere else, there will be some euphorbia. They can be annuals, they can be biennials, they can be perennial, they can be shrubby, they can be trees. Such a vast array of different ways that the euphorbia family has just evolved. But for this one, we're talking about euphorbias for your garden and ones that I particularly like. So let's start off with the one that is the biggest. And here we go. This is a fantastic, almost tropical looking euphorbia, which is hardy in the UK. It goes down to about -10, -12. So most winters it will be absolutely fine. This is Euphorbia pasteurii honeypot, and it grows beautifully in a shrub-like existence, going out to about 1,50 m and up to about 2 meters. And when these beautiful flowers are out fully, the perfume from it is absolutely beautiful. At the moment, oh yes, really sweet honey. It does. It smells like honey. It's fabulous. So this has become quite an important plant for a lot of people in the UK gardens because they love this idea of something that looks exotic and is a little bit like a tropical plant but will be hardy in their gardens. So when we in the UK say that we're doing a Mediterranean garden, a tropical garden, we are utilising plants that look similar but may not be what would grow in those actual areas because we can't keep them going over here. But something like this with this amazing sculptural leaf, I mean, look at this. It's got the most gorgeous midrib here lines, and then the veins go off really, it's almost as though someone has been there with a pen and just drawn these vein lines on. And then you get this inflorescence starting. Now, this is just the start of the inflorescence because basically what they've got is they start off with one little flower open and behind that are another lot of buds. So this will become a big head and it will have a soft green to yellow colour, and against this foliage and with the perfume, absolutely fantastic, and as a large shrub. Now it is basically evergreen, so you will keep most of the foliage here, but it will lose quite a bit of foliage lower down. Don't worry, that is the nature of the beast. So you will always get this architectural look to it as well, and I think it is a fabulous plant. This one was bred in the UK, which means it's just a little bit tougher than say straight pasteurii, and it's a good moderately compact form. So this is a fabulous plant. I would say here in the UK this plant would last in the garden as a perennial between 8 and 10 years, as long as we don't get a really sharp cold wind and frost combined, because that's the one thing that it doesn't like. You can prune back, but be careful. Remember, euphorbias do give off a white sap. So this is a fabulous thing for free draining site, full sun, and it will be happy. So we go from something that is a really tall plant down to ones which are really quite small. But do not be mizzled by this plant. This is Euphorbia cyparissias. This is the straight species and this is Fens Ruby. And there are one or two other named varieties that have been bred. They all have the same propensity to run amok in good garden soil. So you can see it is making a break for freedom out of the pot, and that is what it does in the garden. If you've got the main part of the plant here, look how it is growing out of the side of the pot. So you've got to be very, very careful with where you put this. But the beauty of this particular euphorbia, and remember their common name is also spurge, is that it will grow in really poor soils. So even in the most rocky, dismal bits of dry ground, this plant will survive. And quite often you need that. And especially when you've got these in new build places, you find these horrible little narrow borders that I've come to christen the coffin borders. And something like this euphorbia, as long as it gets enough sunshine, will just fill that space. Because if you've got stone slabs, you've got the house here, and you've got this narrow border, probably only about, I don't know, 20 centimetres wide, this thing would fill it all the way along. Absolutely fine. So just remember, these are great. They look fabulous. They're wonderful underneath shrubs and hedges. If you've got a dry area on a sunny side of a hedge and you can't get anything else to grow, both of these will grow perfectly well. Now, the cyparissias itself has lovely green foliage, makes lovely clumps, and then you get the flower heads coming up, and they're much more rounded, more like a golf ball when they're out and fully open. This one, the Fens Ruby, as the foliage comes up, you have this beautiful red purple tint to the foliage, and then as the flowers open up, it's much more open. Now this seems to flower a little bit earlier than this. Then once the flowers have finished, they go a lovely orange colour and will die back down. But again, Fens Ruby will creep around as well. So for poor soils, somewhere where you can't get anything else to grow, these are really great ground cover. They're not going to get much taller than somewhere around about 20 centimetres, 6 to 8 inches, maybe 25 centimetres, that's about it. But spread wise, well, that's up to you. They are better if they are put into borders which have containing edges. So for instance, if you've got paving slabs and then a wall, they're not going to go anywhere else. They're going to go within that area, unless, of course, it's not very well pointed underneath your pavement. But that's a good place to put them, or if they go along a hedge, they will be fine. Euphorbia cyparissias and Fens Ruby. They are both divisible, obviously. Let's go to another one, which is a really interesting, smallish type of plant, although it looks small in the pot at the moment. It's actually going to come up. It will be about 18 inches by 18 inches, 45 centimetres by 45 centimetres. This is a beautiful one. This one is called Abbey Dore. Now this one came from Abbey Dore Court, which is Herefordshire. That's where it's named after. It is a cross, I think, between Segueriana and one of the other slightly shrubby ones. And this will flower mid-summer. So this is very much in foliage now. Other plants are coming out into flower. We're in middle end of April now. So this is not going to flower until probably end of May, June, July time. So it's that time of year. I grow this one in my gravel garden. It looks fantastic. It just makes a wonderful round clump. It does not spread anywhere. It just stays where you put it. So it's a very obedient plant. What it does is it bulks up by putting on more shoots off the main stem there. It is basically semi-evergreen, so you will get dead sticks coming up, but then you can cut those down, and these stems will come up, and at the end they have an emerald green to start off with bud, then opening to a softer colour. So I think they're a wonderful combination, and their foliage is slightly grey, on the grey blue, I suppose is the best way. Full sun, free draining soil is best for this particular variety. It doesn't seed around. I've not noticed it seeding around in the gravel garden. We do tip cuttings from this one, so that's how we produce it. So that is a good one. For slightly smaller, you can containerize it, but make sure it's in free draining compost. Let's go to another one that is slightly taller, and this is a named one of a species. So this is a form of Euphorbia palustris. Euphorbia palustris is the marsh spurge. So it likes moisture. So the rest of the other ones that we talked about really want to be in dry, and people think you can't get euphorbias that want to be in a moist spot, but you can, and this is one of those. So this will be happy in a bog garden, it will be happy in slightly heavier soils, and it's a very good form and it holds itself up well. Starts to flower, this has been inside, so starts to flower normally about May, June time. And it is really good. It lasts for a long time. Can get up to as high as 2.5 feet, I suppose. So what's that? 75, 80 centimetres in height. And it comes from a tight clump in the bottom here. It's always a tight clump. There are more shoots coming at the base of here. These are the first ones that have come up through. It will, on these branches here, or these little growths here, those will also put on flower. It is a fabulous form, holds itself up well. So sun to part shade, damper soils, really happy, obviously slightly V-shaped, so you will get them going out there. And once you get to the autumn, the bracts on these flower heads go the most beautiful oranges, the foliage goes orangey pink, and it gradually dies back. The stems go orangey pink, so it has a beautiful way of dying back down. It is not an evergreen, it is deciduous, so you will lose all of that. But leave the stems because they go this beautiful pinky colour. They look really architectural, and then once they've gone brown, then you can cut them back. Euphorbia palustris, Walenburgs Glorie. Now, this euphorbia here is probably never going to see the light of day. This is one that is being bred, and it's a cross between two species. And this is really showing you that it can be done. You can cross two species. And this is also showing you one of the other varieties of herbaceous types of euphorbia you can get, and that is Euphorbia griffithii. Now, Griffithii Fireglow is well known. It has a dark red orange florets at the top, and that has been used in the breeding of this plant. And this is what Euphorbia griffithii does. It puts up shoots and it runs along ground and puts up more shoots, so it can take over a bed and be quite good. We no longer grow it on the nursery because it doesn't like being in containers. It loves it in the ground, but as soon as you put it in a container, it just sits there and sulks. So we don't do it anymore. If you're wanting to get something like that, you're better off going to somebody who's got a clump and saying, please, can you give me a division? Because that's the best way of doing it. So this has a clone number. And this is a cross between epithymoides and griffithii. Now, epithymoides is what used to be polychroma, little woodland spurge, so it likes the woodland area. And then, so with the two, you get a much bigger flower head on the top here. You get beautiful stems, etc. Why is it not going to get out into the public? Because euphorbias are poinsettias. Poinsettia virus is in all of these, and if you're wanting to produce something like this mass produced for the market and you want to put it through a lab, the labs won't touch it because it's got the poinsettia virus. And so unfortunately, a fantastic plant like this, which would be superb for everybody's gardens, is going to take a lot longer for them to work out how to get rid of the virus, which is always within this plant. But, you know, something to look out for, something to think, oh, has that come along? Has anybody done anything with that breeding? This is a really fabulous plant. We're just keeping it as a stock plant because it doesn't do our plants any harm. It's just when it goes into a lab, and then it could spread into what is a very good cash crop for winter time. And so therefore they will not touch it until it is clean, which is unfortunate because I think this deserves a bit more, but we'll wait and see. You know, we've already had this plant for 6 years and it's not getting any closer to it being out on the market. But watch out, there may be other people who have got them, and if they're not doing it in the mass production way, then some of these plants will get out in the pours, and you may end up with a plant that's completely different from somebody else's plants, and that's always a good thing to know. So griffithii runs along, Fireglow, lovely orange heads. It's a fabulous garden plant, and that is how it would grow. The last one I have is the Euphorbia Black Pearl, and this is a characias type. This is related to the characias wulfenii that is in my gravel garden, which are looking stunning at the moment. They all seed around, and when one plant after about 6 years starts to look a bit unhappy, I lift it out and I allow seedlings to carry on, and I get seedling variation in heights, I get seedling variation in the size of the flower head, and it's great and it's lovely, and it means that they move around, and then with the big blue mounds of my rosemary, they just look so wonderful at this time of the year. These are really good plants, you know, they are strong, they have strong stems, they go up well, they flower well. They're flowering from March, April, May, looking still good in June, and then you give them a cut back. But please do remember, as I said with the other ones, they all produce the white sap, which can be phytotoxic. So that means if you get the white sap onto your hands, or for some reason it splashes as you're cutting and it gets on your face, if it's sunlight out there, that is when it burns and blisters. So do please be careful when you are pruning or when you are trying to propagate your euphorbias. Now I'm going to show you the propagation of euphorbia, specifically the characias types. So the characias types are woody stems. This one lost its top, so it's producing really good shoots at the base here, and these are what you are wanting to take as your cutting material. You will notice I have put on gloves because I do not want to get, as soon as you cut this, you are going to get white sap coming out. You do not want that on your hands. So it is much better from that point of view. The other thing I'm also going to do with this, I am going to use a pair of snips which are slightly older, because as soon as the white sap gets on these get sticky. And there is it's easier to use an older pair, just make sure they're sharp, and then you can clean them up later. You need to wash them, and then you can put a little bit of oil on them if you want to. With these cuttings, looks like really lovely material up here, but this is too thin. Now, I was told by a couple of very good propagators 2 tricks. One was try and get the slightly thicker material, which is just around about a pencil thickness. And the other thing is, as soon as you take your cutting, plunge the cut bit into compost. So if you're doing it at your plant, take a pot of compost with you and just put it in there. You're not taking the cutting to be the right size when you first cut it off the plant. You put it into the compost, you take it back to your potting bench, wherever you're going to be doing the cuttings, and then you tidy it up, and you do one cutting at a time and stick it so that you don't give it time to bleed too much. So this is what we're doing. We're going to go down, we'll tidy this plant up as we go. So we're going to take a cutting like that, we're going to immediately put it into the compost like so. We're going to cut it and immediately put it into the compost like so. Cut and immediately put it into the compost like so. So basically the cut ends are sitting straight down into that compost. You will see already that it has become white where I have cut off there. So now we need to prepare the cuttings, and we're going to be putting them into the cutting compost. This is quite a free draining cutting compost. No real need to take the material right the way out. You are going to take a slightly longer cutting with these, so it's going to be somewhere around that. Normally I would say cuttings that I like to take are this length, but you're going to take a little bit longer. So from where that is to there, we'd be looking at cutting into the red bit of the material. We will be going behind a leaf, and then we will be removing a couple of leaves, and then we are sticking that straight into the edge of this pot. So this is how it's going to be done. We are cutting there, we are removing 2 or 3 leaves like so, and then we are sticking it directly down into the pot like so. This one, you might as well go to where it's straightening up. You can see there's a leaf there. We'll just literally cut it there and then remove a little bit of leaf. We don't need all of this leaf here, but we're not taking anything off the tips of this, and then we're just going to stick it straight into the bottom there, and that is absolutely fine. Now we're just going to show you one close up. So below some leaves like so, we don't need all of these. So normally it would be about the length of the blade, but now I'm doing it from about the tip there to the end of the cutting comes to the end here like this. So it's a much longer cutting. That's probably enough. There's a bit of a damaged leaf on there, we don't need it. And we then would put it into our compost and we would stick it quite low. And then these will go onto our propagating mist unit and they will look fine. Label it, date it, and quite happy there. It'll need a good soak now so that it gets a good amount of moisture, and then you can put it into somewhere where it either sits in a tray like this and you can water from beneath, or if you've got a propagator, put it into a propagator. This is Euphorbia characias wulfenii. I've mentioned it before and it grows fantastically in my gravel garden, as you can see. Now we're going to look at demonstration of how to cut this back. This is done when the flower heads have gone over, which is usually around early to middle of June. This demonstration is relevant to all of the euphorbias that get slightly woody growth. Cutting back the dead heads of euphorbia, but not wearing clothing like this. Now I'm more appropriately dressed to be able to do the pruning back, deadheading of the euphorbia. The one thing I would mention is I'm using a much older pair of snips than my good new ones, because the reason why I'm dressed up like this is euphorbia has a poisonous and phytotoxic sap which is white, and if you get it on your skin and in bright sunlight like this, it can burn you. So you go in as far as you can and you cut down right down into the bottom of the plant and you get rid of all of the dead old stems that are there. The easiest way to do this is to grab the flower spikes and bend them over, then you can get into the bottom and you can cut, and it's easy to tell which, because what you're leaving behind is this beautiful young growth here. Now if we carry on right the way through this plant and get it all cut down, we will be left with a really fabulous green plant without any old growth sitting there. And what this means is that the green growth that you have left is going to be next year's flower spikes. Now you can see this sap, look at it. It's dripping down there. It's on my gloves, it's on the snips. These gloves will have to be thrown away once I've finished with them, and the snips will have to have a good clean, because once it dries, this sap is really sticky, and it's not something that you want on your clothing or on your equipment either. This is the finished plant, which is grow up and give you good flower next year. That was our video on euphorbia, and just before we end, this beautiful hoverfly has come in just to show you that there are insects and pollinators that really adore these plants. Not only are they brilliant and structural, they are super for the wildlife. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.